Can we just start with the Grenfell inquiry, which reports this week? We've recently seen renewed concern over fire in a tower block in Dagenham. Will the government commit to accepting the Grenfell inquiry report's recommendations?
Well, the Grenfell inquiry is reporting next week, as you know, and Angela Rayner, the Deputy Prime Minister, will be responding to that when we see it. And of course, the government will look extremely closely at that inquiry, and we want to see the truth. We want to see the truth of what happened and lessons learned, and we will take incredibly seriously the findings of that inquiry. And I don't think it would be right for us to sort of preempt that at this stage. But you can be assured that the government will respond fully and take on board that inquiry findings.
Thank you. Now, you've published a pretty busy legislative programme. One item. Is it your intention to legislate to prevent people smoking in the open air?
Well, as you say, we've got a packed legislative agenda, which we set out in our first King's Speech just before recess. More bills announced in that packed agenda than any other incoming comparable government of recent times, and we've already got to work in delivering that, introducing a number of bills before recess, second reading of those bills. Some will complete their common stages next week on rail franchising, on fiscal responsibility, introducing second reading of Great British Energy so that we can keep people's bills lower over the long term, and we've got many more things to come on renters' rights, on employment rights, on tackling water bosses' bonuses.
Yes.
And one of the things that we will be introducing, as was in that King's Speech, was the smoking and vaping bill, as you described, that came from the previous government. Because
yes.
I think there has been a consensus for a long time now that we want to see a smoke-free country, because the health benefits of that and the benefits to our economy of a smoke-free country and a smoke-free generation are huge, and that's why it's something that we'll be working towards.
OK, well, I'm taking that to mean that you are working pretty rapidly towards a situation where people cannot smoke, for example, in pub gardens. The hospitality industry's representatives have said pretty clearly this is going to kill their businesses. After all, if you can't smoke in a pub garden, you might as well just get a keg and take it back to your flat and invite your mates around. Can you explain how attacking an industry that employs hundreds of thousands of people is going to contribute to growth, which you said is your central objective?
Well, look, we're certainly not attacking the hospitality industry. We support the hospitality industry. It's vital to our communities, our high street, our economy, as you say. And look, I mean, I'm not going to preempt what is or isn't going to be in a future piece of legislation. But what I would say is that any such measures to extend some of these issues around smoking will be done in full consultation with business, with hospitality business. We will work incredibly closely about how we would tackle such issues and implement any such measures should they come forward, and the hospitality industry can be assured of that. And that's what we did when we banned smoking in public places indoors in the last Labour government, which actually had led, all evidence showed that actually led to an increase in people attending pubs at the time.
But what they are wondering about, and what I'm asking you about, is the idea that you would ban smoking in the open air. And from what you have just said, it seems to me that you're pretty clear that you are moving to that outcome. Is that correct?
Well, look, as I've said to you, we've got a piece of legislation that's still being developed, that's mainly based on the legislation that was brought in by the previous Conservative government, because there has been this consensus for some time that we want to get to a situation where people no longer smoke, and that's why increasing the age at which you can buy cigarettes is a key part of that. We also want to tackle this scourge of vaping, by the way, which is real blight for many.
We know about the
people.
past measures, but I'm really just asking you about what you plan in relation to smoking in the open air. Are you
Well,
in favour of banning that or not?
Well, as I say, should any such measures come forward in the future, and we are looking at different ways that we can achieve this collective ambition that I think we have, I'm sure everybody shares, because the deaths that come from smoking, 80,000 deaths that come from smoking, the impacts on the health service, not just from deaths, but from cancer and other diseases, the impact on the economy, on people's lives, people's ability to work. You know, these are really big issues that we need to tackle. But I can assure the hospitality industry and you that any such measures would be designed and would be implemented and would be considered in full consultation with licensing authorities and with businesses, and we will work together if we want to bring forward such measures.
Okay, so that's clear, that's in the prospect. Can I ask you about one other thing which you actually you've made a decision about, and that is that there will be a budget at the end of October, and the Chancellor has already said that she won't raise national insurance rates for working people. Can I just get you to be precise about that? Does that mean that you will keep both employee contributions and employer contributions at the current rate, or does the Chancellor's pledge only mean that she will not raise rates on what the employee pays, but what the employer pays may still change?
Well, look, what we said in the election and what we stand by is that we won't be raising income tax, we won't be raising VAT, and we won't be raising national insurance. But as you say, we've got a big budget coming at the end of this month. Those matters are for the Chancellor. I'm not involved in those discussions, as you would expect that I wouldn't be at this stage. But we are facing a difficult situation. Look, we were elected on a mandate of change, and as I've been laying out, we are delivering that change through our legislative agenda. But we do face a difficult economic situation, and the Chancellor will be making
that's very helpful.
Those judgments herself.
What I understand from what you've just said is that neither employee contributions nor employer contributions will go up. Can I ask you about one other thing? The motoring group, the RAC, has called on government to reverse Rishi Sunak's 2022 cut in fuel duty, which is, I think, 5 pence, costs the Treasury about £2 billion a year. The RAC says that the energy companies aren't passing on the cut, and so motorists don't benefit. The energy companies are taking it as profit. Is that on the table?
I don't know is the honest answer, because I'm not involved in the budget decisions. You wouldn't expect me to come onto your programme and speculate about a budget, because I would be purely speculating. These are matters for the Chancellor. She has done an incredible job in a very short period of time looking at the country's finances, and what she's found is appalling. And to just take the metaphor that you started off at the beginning of your programme with your Manchester music references, don't look back in anger. I'm afraid we do look back in anger at what the last government left to this government in the economic inheritance. And now we're faced with some really challenging choices that we
will
didn't
come
want
to
have
Oasis
to make,
before the end of
wanted
this interview, if we may. Well, let me ask you about a decision that she's already made, which is to means test the winter fuel payment. When the Prime Minister said this week those with the broadest shoulders should bear the heaviest burden, was he talking about the 10 million pensioners who will lose that allowance?
Well, look, this is an example of one of the very difficult decisions that we've had to make, that we didn't want to make, that we weren't wanting to do when we got elected.
Well, you didn't have to make it.
Yes, we did, because
you didn't have to make this decision. And I'm really asking you. If these people who will lose that allowance are part of what the Prime Minister means as those with the broadest shoulders, those 10 million pensioners.
Well, I think it is really important for people to understand the context. What we found was that spending was much higher in this year, the current year that we are in, the deficit much higher, debt much higher than anybody had thought. There was a black hole of 22 billion, which was made up of things like nearly 7 billion pound underfunding on the asylum system that the government knew, the previous government knew was there. They knew they had these things on their desk, and they put their head in their sand and they didn't take the difficult decisions that they needed to take because they knew they were going to lose the election and it was going to fall to us to do. And that's why we've had to make some of these really difficult decisions around means testing the winter payment so that the poorest pensioners continue to receive it, but some of the wealthiest pensioners won't. And we also are committed to the triple lock, which is going to see and has already seen pensions increase, and that means that pensions will increase by either average wages or inflation or 2%, whichever is the higher. And that's going to mean that pensioners, the state pension is going to increase by hundreds, if not thousands of pounds over the course of this Parliament.
If I may say so, though, you are now government. You made a choice, and the first choice you've made was to withdraw the allowance from pensioners. In the same way as you've chosen to hand out pay increases way above inflation, while you've been telling mothers with 3 children that they'll have to wait until you found the money to lift the benefit cap. These are your choices.
Look, as I say, finding in-year savings in the current year that you are in is very difficult indeed. And why we had to do that was because if we didn't, we would have seen the markets losing confidence, potentially a run on the pound, the economy crashing. And the people who pay the heaviest price for that are not you and me, Trevor. The people who pay the heaviest price when the economy crashes are the poorest in society that do that. And people like pensioners who are on fixed incomes who see the value of their pension.
But the first thing you've done is withdraw £300 from those pensioners.
So we had to take, we've means tested the winter fuel payment, and that means we've had to take some of those difficult decisions, as you say, and it's not what we wanted to do. And in terms of the public sector pay, don't forget that these pay awards were on the desks of ministers before the election, and they chose not to budget for them, even though they knew they were going to accept them.
OK, can I ask you about an issue of standards? We've been hearing about the Labour MP, who is said to be the largest landlord in the House of Commons, who owns properties that appear to be a health hazard, apparently failed to register them. That's all alleged. Now, not far from where you are, 4 years ago, a 2-year-old boy, Awad Ishak, died from respiratory conditions brought on by living in a damp and mouldy home in Rochdale. Angela Rayner, the housing minister, says there is no justification for letting private landlords off the hook for resolving mould and damp issues. What are you going to do about Mr. Aswal?
Well, look, on him in particular, as I understand it, he himself is furious because he didn't know that this was happening in his housing stock, and he's taken immediate steps to put that right, and that's absolutely as it should be. But you are absolutely right that we need to take on the scourge of the sort of bad landlord and the impact that has on those living in the private rented sector in poor quality, insecure housing. And that's why we've been working at pace over the summer to bring forward the Renters Reform Bill, which will be coming to Parliament very shortly. It is a much strengthened bill from what we saw in the last under the last government, which will bring into effect the so-called Arabs law. I think it's really important to say that
if this had been a Conservative member of Parliament and we had been discussing this morning, I don't believe that we would be hearing that he's decided to fix it, that's as it should be. Would you not be saying now that there should be a standards inquiry, the whip should be withdrawn, and as I think one of your colleagues has said, he should resign?
Well, look, I take at face value what he said in the last few days, and he's got to put that right. He's absolutely got to put those things right, and that's why he sacked the managing agent. But I'm not here to defend his actions. I think what was different under the Conservative government, I think it's a really important point here, is that they had many landlords on their benches who worked as a caucus to actually weaken the proposals on tenants' rights and the Renters' Reform Bill, whereas we've got an incredibly strong policy, and we will stand up to rogue landlords, and we will bring in, for the first time in a generation, some really strong rights for tenants, including on standards and safety.
Sorry to interrupt you. I know you've got to go. I take it you've got your Oasis tickets. Where do you stand on your colleague Zara Sultana's suggestion that Ticketmaster should be nationalised?
I don't think we need to nationalise Ticketmaster, but thankfully, after hours of waiting, like many other people in a queue, I was able to get a couple of Oasis tickets, but at a bit more than I was hoping to pay for them. But anyway.